Everybody rise, please. Please be seated. Court will come to order.
Whoops. I need it. Just a minute. We had a... You didn't make me look up all this law. I wouldn't have all this mess up here, Mr. Drew. We ready to proceed?
Your Honor, before we proceed, I have one request to make. That is, Mr. Bundy's family well, his mother is here already. His father is arriving, as well as his sister, on a noon flight today. And his very good friend Carol Boone and her son Jamie would all very much like to have a contact visit with Mr. Bundy this evening. And I was wondering if I could prevail upon the court to have it arranged so they would be allowed a contact visit with him this evening.
Let's see where we're at in the trial. We might have him busy this evening. I'm going to try to complete as much as I can, if not all of it today, if we have to go into the evening. Yes. So let's see what time it is. And we won't deprive, certainly won't deprive of anything of that, and I'll confer with corrections, see if we can arrange it, depending upon what time we're through. If not, we can catch it bright and early tomorrow morning. One of the two is good. We'll get it done for you, but I just question of time. Yes. All right? Bring a jury on in.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please take your seats to the rear box. Take your original seats.
Another prior stipulation, polling is waived and presence is noted. Call your first witness.
Louise Bundy.
Right this way, please, ma'am. Please, ma'am, step right up the witness box and raise your right hand.
What is your name, please?
Louise Bundy.
And what is your address?
I live in Tacoma, Washington.
And do you have any children?
Now settle down, Mother. We haven't lost a mother in a long time, so just don't be nervous, okay? Okay, go ahead.
Do you have any children, Mrs. Bundy?
Yes, I have 5 children.
And who is your oldest child?
My oldest child is Ted.
And when was Ted born?
November 24th, 1946.
Could you tell us the ages of your other children?
Yes, our oldest daughter, Linda, is 27, Glenn is 25, Sandra is 23, and Richard is almost 18.
And where was Ted born?
In Burlington, Vermont.
Who raised Ted as an infant and as a young child?
I did.
And where were you living at that time?
Well, for the first couple of years of Ted's life, I lived in Philadelphia with my family.
Did there come a time when you moved to Tacoma, Washington?
Yes, I had very close relatives in Tacoma, and they thought it was a great place to live, so Ted and I moved there.
Okay. And what, if anything, happened in your life after you moved to Tacoma, Washington?
Well, I met a very wonderful man named John Bundy, and we were married a few months later.
And was Ted adopted by John Bundy?
Yes, he was.
And how old was he when he was adopted?
He was 4 1/2.
Could you describe for us Ted's early childhood and his upbringing? How did you raise Ted?
Well, we tried to be very conscientious parents, ones who did things with our children, gave them the best we could give them on a middle-class income. But mostly we wanted to give them lots of love.
What did your husband do?
My husband did and has been a cook at Madigan Army Hospital at Fort Lewis, Tacoma.
For how many years has he been a cook there?
Since 1952.
And have you worked outside the home?
Not until 7 years ago. I stayed home with the children until 7 years ago.
And where did Ted go to school?
Objection to relevancy, Judge.
Well, look.
Ted went to school in Tacoma. All his schooling was in the city of Tacoma public schools.
And during that period of time, did you help Ted with his studies?
Oh, yes. I can remember many a night we stayed up way past midnight when he had a big exam coming up, and I'd try to help him with reading off questions I thought he might be getting, and he'd work it out.
Was Ted a conscientious student?
Very much so.
And what year did Ted graduate from high school?
He graduated from Wilson High School in 1965.
And during high school, did Ted ever have any employment or jobs?
Yes, he worked as a newspaper delivery boy for the local paper. He did a lot of lawn cutting jobs. He and a friend had quite an enterprise there. And he worked as a cleanup person in one of the bowling alleys in the area.
And after high school, did Ted go to college?
Yes, he did.
And where did he start college?
He went his first year at the University of Puget Sound, which is just 2 blocks from where we live.
Did he live at home that year?
Yes, he did.
And after he went to the University of Puget Sound, where did he attend school?
He then transferred to the University of Washington in Seattle.
And what did he study?
At that time, he was majoring in Asian studies.
Did he ever change his major again?
Oh, yes. He changed it several times. Mainly his interest was in the law, and so he was taking the courses he felt would be helpful in that respect.
Did Ted ever express a desire to go to law school?
Many times, ever since he was a small boy, really.
And where else did Ted go to college?
He had a special grant to study at Stanford one summer, and that was while he was still in Asian studies, in Chinese language. All of my family live in Philadelphia, so one semester he spent at Temple University in Philadelphia.
And why did he go to Philadelphia, do you recall?
Partly because he wanted to visit with my family. His grandfather lives there, and he and his grandfather had been very close when Ted was little. But also because at that time he was much interested in the plight of the inner city. And if there's ever an example of the plight of an inner city, it would be in Philadelphia. So he thought that would be an interesting place to
Where
be.
did you say he studied in Philadelphia?
Where?
At what university?
At Temple University.
During the time that Ted was in school, did he have jobs at the same time? Did he work?
Yes, it was really necessary. He worked as a busboy at the Seattle Yacht Club. He worked for a lawyer's or attorney's messenger service. He worked for the crisis clinic, manning telephones at night.
What was the crisis clinic?
Well, a crisis clinic is where people call in who have urgent problems that need someone to talk to.
And when did Ted finish college?
He finished college in 1972, graduated from the University of Washington.
And during this period of time, did he ever work in any political campaigns?
Yes, he did. He, off and on, ever since he was in high school, he had been interested in politics. But I think the biggest one was in 1968. At first he was working for the Rockefeller campaign. He came here, in fact, to Miami, to the Republican National Convention. When Mr. Rockefeller didn't get the nomination, Ted went back home and worked for the election of the lieutenant governor in the state of Washington that year.
Was he ever employed by the, what would be like the statewide Republican committee in Washington State?
Yes, he was. In, if I can get the date exact, I believe it was most of 1974. He was assistant to the chairman of the Central Committee.
And what else did Ted do as work during that period of time?
Well, let me see. He was always busy, always had a job. He worked for the Seattle Crime Commission, doing research work, I believe, for them. And he also worked for Governor Evans' campaign later.
And was Governor, well, he was elected governor of Washington.
Yes, attorneys, messenger service. He worked for the crisis clinic, manning telephones at night.
What was the crisis clinic?
Well, a crisis clinic is where people call in who have urgent problems that need someone to talk to.
And when did Ted finish college?
He finished college in 1972, graduated from the University of Washington.
And during this period of time, did he ever work in any political campaigns?
Yes, he did. He, off and on, ever since he was in high school, he had been interested in politics. But I think the biggest one was in 1968. At first he was working for the Rockefeller campaign. He came here, in fact, to Miami, to the Republican National Convention. When Mr. Rockefeller didn't get the nomination, Ted went back home and worked for the election of the lieutenant governor in the state of Washington that year.
Was he ever employed by the, what would be like the statewide Republican committee in Washington State?
Yes, he was. In, if I can get the date exact, I believe it was most of 1974. He was assistant to the chairman of the Central Committee.
And what else did Ted do as work during that period of time?
Well, let me see. He was always busy, always had a job. He worked for the Seattle Crime Commission, doing research work, I believe, for them. And he also worked for Governor Evans' campaign later.
And was Governor, well, he was elected governor of
Yes,
Washington.
he certainly was.
And that was prior to your current governor, is that correct?
Yes, that was the 72 campaign.
Okay. And after Ted finished college, did he ever go to school after that?
Yes, he went to law school.
When did he enter law school?
He entered the University of Puget Sound Law School in the fall of '74.
And how long was he there?
The fall and the spring semesters.
And where did he transfer after that?
To the University of Utah Law School.
Okay, and when was the last time that he attended law school? Do you recall approximately what month, what year that would have been?
October, oh boy. Get my years mixed up. He went for 1 year to University of Utah and started the second year but did not finish.
Could you describe the relationship that you have had with your son, Ted Bundy?
Objection to relevancy.
I'll let her answer.
I've always had a very special relationship with all my children. We tried to treat them all equally. But Ted being the oldest, and you might say my pride and joy, our relationship was always very special. We talked a lot together. And his brothers and sisters thought of him as just the top person in their lives, as we all do.
And even since the time that Ted has lived away from home, has he maintained good contact and a good relationship with you?
Oh yes, always. I have a lot of telephone bills to attest to that. He would call home if he could, if he didn't write. And we kept in very close touch, always.
What effect would it have on you if Ted were executed?
Objection, that's obvious.
I'll sustain.
What are your feelings on the death penalty as regards to your son?
Same objection.
I'll sustain.
Have you considered the possibility that Ted might be executed?
Objection.
I'll let her answer that.
Yes, I've considered that possibility. I had to, because of the existence of such in this state. I consider it, the death penalty itself, to be the most primitive, barbaric thing that a human being can impose upon another. And I've always felt that way. It has nothing to do with what's happened here. My Christian upbringing tells me that to take another's life under any circumstances is wrong. And I don't believe the state of Florida is above the laws of God. Ted can be very useful in many ways to many people living. Gone from us would be like taking a part of all of us and throwing it away.
And if Ted were to be confined to spend the rest of his life in prison, do you anticipate that you would maintain your close ties with him?
Oh, of course. Yes. I have no further questions.
No questions.
You may step down, Ms. Bundy.
Right this way, please.
Call your next witness.